Hi, I'm Elaine Harding. Welcome to my blog at stampwithelaine.com. This is part 2 of the Nature's Prints series. Today I'm going to be using a watercolour and embossing technique. This is the card we'll be making, and that's the inside. If you missed part 1, that was published on Wednesday, watch that one as well. You'll find the Sun Prints suite on pages 90 to 91 in the new annual catalogue. We aren't going to be using any of the papers today. The water painters, these come in a pack of 3. A fine tip, a medium tip, and a flat tip. The painter comes with a barrel that also contains water, and you can see here embossed the word push, so all you have to do is just squeeze there and then water will come out and wet the paintbrush. The ink I'm using is Starry Sky. This is one of the new in colours for 22 to 2024. Now you can either buy the ink pads separately and build up your collection, and you'll find the codes on page 122 and they'll be listed here. Make sure you're ordering the right ones, because I've known of customers who've accidentally ordered last year's lot instead of this year's. The stamping pad is £7.50 each. If you want to save some money, then turn over to page 126 and you'll find the assortment and bundles page and the code for the in colours, where you can buy the collection of 5 ink pads at a slight saving of 10%. So you'll get 1 each of the 5 colours and you save some money to boot. First, some mark ink. I'm using watercolour paper. This is called the Fluid 100, and they come in a pack and they measure 7 inches by 5 inches. So I've simply cut it in half. So now this measures 3.5 by 5 inches, and in metric that's 9 centimetres by 13 centimetres. We're also going to be doing a bit of clear embossing and white embossing using this technique. Pack of the basic Stamp Emboss powders, and there are 3 pots in all. One is clear, one is white, and the other is black. And of course you need a heat tool. I'm also going to be using these lovely Layers vellum cardstock. They measure 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and in metric that's 9.5 by 12.7 centimetres. So there are 4 designs, 5 of each. There's this circle one, a spotty one, and a mountain one, and this foliage one, and the rest is just blanks. So I'm going to be using a blank. I'm also going to be using the metallic woven ribbon in Starry Sky. Now this ribbon ties really nice bows because it's very soft. You see how. It's not hard or anything, it just ties a really nice bow. And then you can also fray the edges like so, or you can pull them apart so that it looks more like a wire mesh. Basic rhinestone jewels. My card base is half an A4 sheet. In Europe that measures 8 1/4 by 5 7/8. In metric that's 21 centimetres by 14.5 centimetres. The inside of the card, I have a basic white piece of cardstock cut at 3 3/4 by 5.5. That's 9.5 centimetres by 14 centimetres. I also need a clear block to pick up ink from the ink pad. Now, there are two ways of doing this. You can transfer the ink from your ink pad onto the lid by just squeezing it. But I don't like dirty ink pads, and I prefer to keep my ink pads clean. So my solution is just to pick up ink with the acrylic block, and I can so easily just rinse that under the tap afterwards. First, take the watercolour paper, and I'm going to wet this. You turn anti-clockwise direction to unscrew it. And I'm going to squeeze so I get plenty of water out to wet the paper. Then tighten it again in a anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise direction. Then pick up some ink with the acrylic block and just use that to lay down the ink. Then you can lighten the colour or darken it. Now I'm going to leave it to dry. And another tip, when brush tip is still wet, put it back in the cap so you don't accidentally crease the fibres or have them out of shape. Now, whenever I'm stamping with Versamark, I do like to use my Stamparatus. This is a stamp positioning tool supplied by Stampin' Up. It's their own brand. I butt it up in the corner there. Now, if I want things to be coming off it, that's what I do. The reason why I use the Stamparatus is because Versamark ink is clear, and it's also a type of ink which will take longer to dry, and so therefore you have time to put embossing powder over it, and it's sticky, so the powder will stick to the ink. And since I can't see where I'm stamping, if I've misstamped or there's insufficient ink coverage, I can stamp again in exactly the same position. So it's always good to butt up your cardstock right in the corner, so you know that you get the card in the exact placement as before. So bring in my powder and sprinkle it over the image. Tap off the excess. Now let's emboss it. So now I change stamps. Make sure rub that over so that it doesn't create static. I'm going to reposition my stamp a little lower down and stamp again. And for this side, I'm going to turn the card upside down, position my stamp there. I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to do the label now. Back that up into the corner. Use my dust buddy to prevent static. So stamp it in Versamark first. and then stamp it in. Starry sky. You're working with embossing powder, good idea to shut your ink pads so you don't get embossing powder over it. Now I'm going to switch to the clear embossing powder to put it on the vellum, because if you just stamp on vellum, the ink will smudge or I'm turning it on its back. Now you can see it's quite difficult to adhere vellum to cardstock without it sort of showing underneath. So what I am doing is just using Tombow and writing over the script so it hides it. Just little dots. And then I'm going to pop that onto the cardstock here. Hopefully it will dry clear. And then just add a rhinestone. Bring back my card base. Just going to ruck up the edges here just to adhere that. Let's decorate the inside of the card. So this is quite a strong colour and I want it fairly light. So I'm going to stamp off keep on stamping off. I forgot to do that one. And I smudge that. And it's got a halo. Oh, start again. The good thing is that there's an emergency side. So you just flip the card over and have another go. Must remember to stamp off. So bring back my card and then just glue this into the inside and I'm done except for the ribbon. Now you want a generous amount to make sure the inside is not wrapped up so it's not twisted or anything, and that you have sufficient ribbon on this end to tie a bow. This is when glue dots come in handy. It acts as a third hand. So I'm going to put a glue dot round about there, which is where I want the ribbon to be. Cross that over. And where you've knotted it, press that down onto the glue dot so it holds it in place while you tie your bow. Now you can pull this metallic ribbon apart like that so it looks more like a mesh. I've been way too generous with this ribbon, but never mind. For the video it's probably best to have too much than too little because it's hard to tie bows on camera. So there's the card finished. Now here's another example using the embossing folder, and I inked up this side of the embossing folder where the logo is with white craft ink before embossing, and it gives this sort of effect. Don't know whether it's quite visible in the camera, but the white ink sort of hits the cardstock where the indentations are, and it sort of makes the relief work of the ferns pop. And in this other sample, I stamped on the designer series paper, and I combined this with this other stamp set called Botanical Layers. This is part of the bundle. It coordinates with the Botanical Layers, so these two are a bundle. So I combined the two stamp sets. So I hope you enjoyed this technique. You can do it one of two ways. You can either use an emboss resist technique or this technique here that I've showed you today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be back with more inspiration next week. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest or Instagram, and you'll find the links to the supplies below this video in the Show More section. If you like this video, then do give me a thumbs up, like it and share it, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Bye.